they didn't feel it as keenly as you felt it, because your degree of alignment is the comparison of your degree of misalignment. In other words, there are a lot of people living wretched lives by your standards who are happier than you are, because their life hasn't caused them to reach so far. So where they are is here in what you would call a wretched place, but what they've reached for is here. So there's only this place between where they are, and there is that sort of safeguard in everything. In other words, if it becomes unbearable, you don't bear it, you reemerge.
So, for instance, again, given that the last year's contrast has been relatively economic, and not many people have, for instance, died from it, etc., but that level of contrast that has been created through that level of suffering is in some ways as great as, or even greater than, let's say, the contrast that will be experienced by people in the middle of a war where there are people dying, etc.?
Whether you are ripped from who you are because you're focused upon the horror of war, or whether you're ripped from who you are because you're focused upon the absence of something that you keenly want, being ripped from who you are is being ripped from who you are.
So contrast is an individual thing, or at least it's relative to how far you are from your own individual alignment versus, say, a fixed continuum of contrast.
Always. It's an individual thing. That's why no one does it to you. That's, in other words, we said it a few times here today, that if life hadn't caused you to reach over here, you wouldn't feel bad when you didn't go. If life didn't cause you to reach over here, then you wouldn't feel dissatisfied about standing here. And that's why this cynical approach that you were giving yourself credit for taking, we want to say to you that even as you stand in this, so we just want to ask, just for sake of fun and clarification, the suffering that he's talking about relative to the financial thing, are you suffering? No. Anyone? In other words, not a whole lot of suffering going on by those in this room. Now, you could go into another group of people who have been playing the game at a higher level, where their stakes were higher, where they'd invested so much more into it. In other words, Jerry and Esther said, the stock market isn't a concern to us because we weren't playing that game. So whether it's up or low, up or down, whether people are thriving or not, it is not personally affecting us, but it's very different for those who have been playing the game. And so that brings us back around to something that you said, but we'll amplify it back to you, and that is that it really is an individual thing. And the part that we really want to convey to you is that the you that is source energy, and we'll call that part of you us, the you that is source energy is aware of where you are without suffering. In other words, you're never abandoned by us. But for your well-being, as well as our well-being, we don't go to the depths of where you go, because we are the stable holder of the new benchmark that we have all established together. And it comes back to the same thing. We used to offer a very simplistic analogy. Why is the electricity that moves through the walls of this building, why doesn't that electricity come and be the toaster? And we say, because a toaster with no electricity doesn't toast toast. And if the current becomes the toaster, then there's no current that makes the toaster work.
I understand, I guess, and you just said it perfectly, that you don't come to the depths that we create. But on the other hand, you say many times, and you've said it today, that you as non-physical, or as the larger part of us, ride the rocket of what is created, what we become. In other words, what we want in our escrow, because if we're suffering, experiencing contrast or something, then what we want is immediately created, and you as non-physical get the benefit of that. And so it would just seem logical that you would, since you are not coming there into the depths with us, that you would kind of sort of root for us to go further into the depths, because it simply creates more in escrow for you to ride.
Well, we do root for the contrast, and we do root for what is born out.